used to be a Christian country musician, and when driving home from one of his concerts, he dropped off his sister, who's also in the Holy Randy Travis.
The things that fame do to people. Maybe.
And they're like the first for each other, and then I hear this, and I'm like,
so, all right. On the syllabus, we have stats review for today as well. I'm gonna make that its own, a full lecture, and we'll see what happens, whether it eats up a signal detection theory lecture or if we just things kind of get bumped down. And I'm learning to appreciate Dr. Fogelman's scheduling, because he always leaves these cushions here in case of something like this. So, and I'm not sure how much we'll need a review at the end, because we might have one day, because it's a take-home exam. Anyway, we'll see. But anyway, so that's what's going to happen, just so you know. So next week it will be stats review with its own lecture. And it's crazy how fast the end of the semester is coming up.
don't say that.
Yeah, it's like, it's good and bad, because you realize all these things that you should have been getting done are still not done. And you're like, wow. But I'm kind of glad that, this semester is over halfway done. But anyway, so actually, yeah, I want to count here real quick. So we have 3, 4, 5, 6, well, more like 5, 6, 7, 8. No, that's 8, 9 more times we'll meet, which is the equivalent of about 5 weeks. So anyway, crazy. We're gonna miss you. What are we gonna do?
As long as you don't get rid of them.
All right. So for today, we're going to talk about psychophysics, a quick intro, some of the psychophysical methods, psychophysical functions, the power law, and then we're going to summarize. Psychophysics is what you would guess it is based off of the word. So it's combining physics and psychology together. And the physical side is with the stimulus. And I'm glad he chose noise as the example, because that's something that I understand well here. So real quick, a quick review, because we're going to use the example of sound throughout. I think we did cover this before a little bit, but I want to review. And actually, I've been thinking of trying this out for those who are reviewing. I'm just wondering if this will work. You can see my... this exercise. It was in, I think, in 415 or 420. I don't know. Yeah, it is an elephant, but that was with my eyes closed. It's yes. So the exercise is to demonstrate how humans are really good at visualizing, an image. Computers aren't so good at that. And then the flip side is that the computer can pick out a pattern in numbers where it's really hard for us to just look at a set of numbers and be like, oh yeah, that's a sine curve, or yeah.
Screwed up, I guess, an elephant. I did not know I was right.
You were right. So okay, this is an experiment here. No, I want, yeah. Let's go with red. And, oh, that's all? Okay. All right, let's see. So with sound is a pressure wave that travels through the air. And just to visualize that wave, we'll go like this. So there were three things listed on the slide. It's hidden now, but the intensity, wavelength, and frequency. So if we were going to measure the, let's start with the frequency of this wave, what would we be measuring?
How frequently it occurs, or how many times does it occur within?
Good. So we would measure from peak to peak of this wave, and the number of peaks per second would give us the measure of hertz, actually. So if there was 1 peak per second, it would be 1 hertz. You know, if it was 50,000 peaks per second, it would be 50 kilohertz. So that gives us our frequency. What about the wave length? So we actually kind of already drew it on there, right? So it's the distance. Frequency is the number per second, you know, how many times it happens per second. The wavelength is that would actually be this distance here between the waves. And then finally, intensity. So how would we measure intensity?
Is it how high the?
Yes. It would be the amplitude of the wave. Yeah, you guys don't even need this review. So I'm going to just label that as I, or you could say the amplitude. So that's for sound. Light does behave like a wave, but it also behaves like a particle. It's weird. So we won't use light as an example. We're going to stick with sound. So those are the three things: intensity, the wavelength, and then the frequency. So those things we can measure objectively. Like we have instruments that will actually measure those and give us a number, and they don't rely on our perceptions. The psychological magnitude, however, does rely on psychology, on our perception. So it's based on individual experience, and we can't measure it objectively. We have to look at responses from people, unfortunately. Although, you know, I wonder if I mean, there's so many things being developed. In neuroscience is sort of the final frontier of the human body. It's the part that we understand the least, and it's where a lot of new research is being developed. But I would imagine that soon, you know, in the next 10 to 20 years, we might have a way to actually measure that measure someone's pain objectively, rather than them just telling their doctor, "Oh, it hurts." You know, on a scale of 1 to 10, you know, it's so so subjective. So I would imagine we will have that ability soon. You know, relatively speaking, soon. But
When you look at someone's heart, it can tell you how intense someone's pain is with a faster heart. You're usually showing a higher pain level.
okay. So yep, that is an objective measure. It's still a response from their body, although they don't consciously.
You can trick it psychologically.
Yeah. So I'm curious, can you think of any examples where your experience affects how you respond to a stimulus? Like, how does your past experience affect your response to a stimulus? When I say stimulus, I mean, I think mostly of like pain. So, you think you might, now it could go either way, but I'm just curious if maybe you've experienced some sort of pain, and then the next time you experience that pain, did you notice a difference? Was it more or less?
I also like getting a shot as a kid.
Okay, yeah.
I remember it as being excruciating. And the next time get it like older or something. Okay.
Well, it's like I take Humira shots, and that's literally, it would be less painful to just stab me
Wow.
with a straight up knife.
Are
But
they
it's,
that bad?
they're incredibly painful. But then I went and got another shot day afterwards,
And it was fine.
and it didn't even hurt in the least. But I was like all tensed and freaked out because I know this constant pain from my Humira shots, and it was just like, hey, you're done? What the hell?
Well, couldn't it also be the administrator who gives you the shot?
Different muscle groups. So it goes into the backside, and what it is the Humira is such a solid. It's almost a solid. It's very thick. If you've ever had a penicillin shot, I call it the peanut butter shot because that's the texture almost.
Wow.
It's a really thick goo that's being put into your system. So yeah, it hurts way more than like a simple liquid shot. Like,
Yeah, that would hurt. So our past experiences will influence how we perceive that same stimulus in the future. And those are some good examples. So, my cousin, he had like the lowest pain threshold of someone I've ever seen. I don't know, like his mom would be getting his, splinters are not fun, but like she'd be getting a splinter out and he would be, you'd think that someone was like sawing his arm off with a dull saw or something else. Just like, and I don't know, I guess, man, I thought he was just a wimp, but maybe, I don't know, maybe there's something,
Like my fiance, every time he came home with blood on his face, and his mom's like, "Really? Again? Go away and go clean up."
Well, I remember when I got splinters, I screamed bloody murder because they were just rooting around trying to get the splinter out. And I was
yeah. Well, splinters can be, they can be really painful, but
I don't have an experience.
everyone's.
No, my parents would go digging around, and my mom would have to keep her hands over my mouth because I was screaming so loud. It hurt.
Well, so that I think those are all factors that would influence your perception of the pain. So we talk about pain thresholds, but it's true that varies in between people, and even within the same person, depending on the circumstance. Generally, though, there is a linear relationship between the physical and the psychological magnitude. So if you increase the voltage of the shock, I'm thinking of that experiment from research methods. If you increase the voltage of the shock, then you should see a corresponding increase in the response from the person. So this is the definition of psychophysics. It's looking at the relationship between the physical and the psychological. So we're going to talk about these three: absolute thresholds, difference thresholds, equality of stimuli. And like we mentioned, thresholds will vary amongst people, but also within the same person from trial to trial. And we are best at simple detection, and that is the signal present or not? Like, is the light on or off? Is there sound or not? That's really easy. It starts to get harder with these other differences. So the direction. With sound, how do we determine direction? How is it that? Yeah, where it's coming from. How do we know? So our bodies are designed to be able. Yep, good. So not only is it a nice redundancy to have two eyes and two ears in case something happens to one. Speaking of system safety, but also being bilateral, it helps us determine the direction of sound. Have you ever? I maybe if there's time, remind me if there's time, we will look at oh, I forget what it's called, but there's a really cool 3D audio thing on YouTube. I think it's called spatial audio. Anyway, of a barber shop.
Are they singing?
No,
Are they making
it's just
noise?
it's really interesting. So you know, there's been a big focus in like in gaming, for example, in virtual reality, in augmented reality, but it's been slow to pick up on the audio side of things. But spatial audio, well, yeah, it's expensive to record it. I was interested in looking, recording it, but it's it's expensive. Yeah, never mind. But
You'll only buy a little.
but
Expensive.
I feel like spatial audio could be just as immersive or maybe even more immersive than like virtual reality. And listening to this this thing on YouTube, the barbershop, I don't know. Yeah, I literally like laughed out loud when I listened to it because it was just so cool, I thought. But anyway, so our ears are positioned so that we can determine generally the direction. Maybe not. We're not, if we had like 3 ears, then maybe we could, we would be better. We get more, another point, just like GPS is, and like 3 eyes. With 2 eyes, we can perceive depth. But that would be interesting. Speaking of bionic humans, like the soldier of the future, a camera that's like wired into your brain, an infrared camera, like so it'd have built-in infrared and night vision and all that, so the soldiers don't even have, like, they can see in 3 dimensions. And anyway,
Let that be after I'm dead.
so the relative difference, so direction we can do better than the relative difference, to say if like I change the decibel level by 2 decibels, we're not really good at saying, oh yeah, that was 2 decibels increase. We're better at just saying there's sound or not sound, or like maybe it went up versus down, but not, putting a number to it. And then meter difference. Well, I guess that's kind of what I'm talking about, is putting a value to it. Absolute thresholds. So if you've ever, we've all heard the term subliminal. Comes from the word Lyman, which refers to the threshold. So if it's subliminal, it means we actually, it's low enough that we can't perceive. It's below our threshold of, perception. Supraliminal would be above, so we can actually sense it. Yeah.
Should cause everything makes more sense.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Things easier.
Yeah. So absolute thresholds, that's the, if you had to draw a line, that's the line that would say, okay, above this line, you can perceive it, below it, you can't at all. Difference thresholds is where the lines where we can actually detect the change or the difference in the stimulus. So it's also called the difference Lyman, and it's not constant. Some examples. So if you're trying to carry a 100-pound load, which that's a pretty, after going through our methods, yeah, that's this is a weightlifter. You don't notice if someone puts a feather on top, right? That's below the difference threshold for I'd say everyone. I don't know if there's anyone who could detect that. Maybe a monk in Japan, I don't know. And then like with a jackhammer, if you're running the jackhammer and someone's just talking at a normal level, you're not going to notice. You can't perceive that difference in thresholds. So Weber's law is, I always love, some of these acronyms and terms, but so yeah, so it's a way to measure the just noticeable difference. So this determines the difference in the change in intensity. This is the initial or the reference intensity, and K is a constant term that's proportional to the two intensities. So any guesses on, so down here, this is frequency in sound, and this is the amplitude or intensity in decibels. So 100, like this is really loud, like jet engine loud. The OSHA Pel is right here, right at 90. But right. So, any guesses on what frequencies human speech are found in generally? Yeah. On this scale, it's low. Now they've done this in a log format, so that doesn't look as low as it really is. I mean, if it was a linear scale, 10,000 would be, over in the crash lab. And but anyway, so human speech, I don't remember exactly is not important though. It's in for women, it's in the mid 100s to the mid 200s, and for men it can be as low as like 80 and go up to the high 100s. So there is some overlap. I'm sure we all know men with really high voices and women with really low voices, and the woman's voices would be lower than this guy's high-pitched voice anyway, but generally that's where it falls. So
my sister spoke at a frequency level when she was 2. My mom couldn't hear her, and she always asked me for translation.
Wow.
Like, what is she saying? And I'm like, Mom, she said whatever. And it took my mom almost a year for her
Interesting.
to get below that frequency threshold. My mom could finally hear her.
So tell me if this was your generation or if it's younger, or maybe it's older than your generation. I don't know, but text tones that were high. So was that your generation?
Yes. So,
Text tones that were really high.
There was a frequency we all assumed our teachers couldn't hear, so we would set that to our phone messaging, so we can hear whenever someone would get a text message, and they would just send a text in the middle of class, and the professors or the teachers couldn't hear at all. And they've actually started utilizing that similar frequency in the halls of schools to prevent loitering between classes. It's like the most demonic source of
Interesting.
information that came from my generation, and I still hate it to this day.
That's
See,
interesting.
I know. I was homeschooled my whole life.
So okay, so this is a little bit of industrial hygiene, stuff, but
this was middle school.
so any guesses on the frequencies that industrial machines typically produce?
I would say pretty low. Well, not
I would
pretty
think
low,
it would
but
be
medium.
So most machines are really high. Yep. And so if we experience any noise induced hearing loss from work or whatever, environmental exposures, it's usually on the high range. So that if the frequency of noise is high that you're being exposed to, then that's the frequency of hearing that you're going to lose. So generally our hearing starts to degrade on the high end, which in a way is good, right? Because the range that we really care about is down here.
No other human being can.
Yeah, well, that's a possibility too, I guess. But so I know there are examples of farmers who've they've retired or whatever, and they've lost, so it's progressed, their hearing loss has progressed so much that it's down into the range that, say, their wife's voice is. So they can't hear their wife, but they can hear like their sons or something, for example. And it's not selective. It's just that, yeah. So kids in class would take advantage of the fact that adults, start to, we lose it on the higher range. Yeah. But what this graph is showing is that at certain frequencies, we don't perceive the amplitude as the same. I mean, here at 1,000, if we're at 90 decibels, we actually, if it's 90 decibels at 1,000, we would actually perceive that as lower than if it was at this other 300 decibels. Anyways, just to show that we don't perceive each frequency equally. Certain frequencies might sound louder than others, even though they're actually not. All right, we're going to talk about each of these. The classical methods, which are older, and then modified, more updated methods. Method of adjustment is the most basic. It's where the subject adjusts the stimulus themselves. So they'll raise it up, and once they perceive a difference, then they indicate that. So you have multiple trials where you go up or down, and you average the results over all the trials. And it's testing absolute thresholds. Well, it can test both absolute and difference and equality, but with absolute, the subject varies the stimulus until it's just barely perceptible versus nothing. The difference threshold is the same sort of idea. They vary it until they can tell there's a difference. Method of limits. You know what? I think I'm mixing this one up with something else. It's very similar to method of adjustment, except that the experimenter is the one. It is the same one I was thinking of. I just was looking for some cues I wasn't seeing. So the experimenter adjusts, and it's the same idea. The person indicates when there's either none to something, or they notice a difference, or they notice equality. And again, you average all the trials. You have multiple trials. This is an example of results from trials with noise. You can see here down at this level.
Is that a hearing test?
Or
something along the line?
Similar, yeah, similar idea. So you can see it's between 62 and 64 decibels that they're noticing the difference here. We can see the actual numbers here. So I guess it's closer to 62. Anyway, it's an example of you can see they started high, they go down till they can't hear anything. They start low until they go up till they hear something. They're important though.
Yeah, I get that, but can you hear anything? How about when you hear something and you don't hear anything, you start panicking?
Yeah, it could. I mean, speaking of psychophysics, that stress, the stress that's induced when you're taking it, because it's a test,
Yes, it is.
could affect
Screw it up.
your ability to perceive the stimulus.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm reading in this ear, nothing in this ear, but the beep's coming from this ear as well, and it's just, I feel it.
Or you losing the hearing in that ear.
So with methods of constant stimuli, you usually have 4 to 7 different intensities, and some of them are well above the threshold, some are below, and then some are in the middle where you're going to get a 50% chance of responding yes or no. Yeah, I hear it, or no, I don't. So by convention, when you're determining what the cutoff level is, that threshold, that you go with the 75% point, which is halfway between the 50 and the 100%. So this can do absolute, difference, and equality. See if there's anything else here that we need to. Not really. We kind of talked about this. It may be more desirable in some situations than others. It may work better than if there's not a chance for an experimenter to adjust or the subject themselves to adjust. Then where you need it designed and set up from the beginning, then this would be a good choice. Okay, staircase method. This one I like. So basically, any guesses on what's going on just by looking at the graphs? So this is the intensity.
Slowly lowering everything, but slowly decreasing.
And would this be absolute difference or equality? If they're just saying seen or not seen. So this would be absolute. If it's, oh, I saw it or I didn't see it.
So this is a night test.
Apparently some sort of, yes, vision. Oh, it's involved with vision. You could say I heard it or I didn't hear it. Same idea. Heard, not heard.
Oh, yeah, but
Oh, so they don't hear the lower ones when they're used to the high frequency.
Well, so what's happening is it's kind of the same idea as the constant, or not constant, the method of limits, where you start high and you're this. So it's the staircase method. So you're taking it. You take a step down. Can you hear that? Yeah. Just take a step down. Can you hear that? Yeah. Take a step down. Can you hear that? Yeah. And then once, yes. So once they can't hear it, then you bump it up back to the previous step. And you can see sometimes like, oh, now they did perceive it at that same level. So because they did, you go down. Now they didn't, so you go up. They didn't again, so you go up. Anyway, so you just try to sort of normalize at the level where that threshold is for that person. And then you could take, yeah.
Well, that started normalizing at that one level.
oh, now I see what you're talking about.
And so
Because
it
they
looks
went
like
down
money.
too far, they couldn't. Okay.
Because if you look down where it went down twice,
Uh-huh.
the next time they went back up, they couldn't hear it. So
Yeah, they had to go back up
twice.
twice. So
One,
then on the next one, why did it go down again? Would they have known?
well, so that's,
Is it normalized?
so maybe it is that they did actually perceive it, and so it went down. Or if someone's smart and they pick up on the pattern here, what might be an issue with this method? If someone,
Fake the results.
yes, I mean with all of them, I guess you could fake it, but
Yeah.
with this one especially, you could start to notice a pattern in the way that that it's going. You're like, okay, every time I can hear it, they drop it down, and every time I can't hear it, they bump it back up. And you could start to, I don't know, sometimes people just want to mess with the results. And sometimes they're trying to give the response that they think the researchers want. And so they do, but it messes up with the results. And both of those approaches mess with the results, but anyway, so that's the staircase method. The way to deal with that, where people like anticipating, is you interleave several runs. So you change it up so that they can't guess what you're gonna do next.
So
Basically.
the next box, the right, is that with the same person and they just start from low and high? They're just comparing?
So what's happening is they're doing two. So this is the interleaving. They're doing two staircases during the same
Okay, so
test period.
Oh.
No, it's the same person, but they have two staircases. Yes. Yeah. So it starts to, I mean, whoever's administering is keeping track of which staircase they're doing, but by alternating between the staircases,
you'll see.
you keep them off guard, keep them guessing at what you're gonna give them next. So.
Okay.
So the modified uses Monte Carlo simulation as a. Oh no, sorry. Wow. I was just. That's a method of modeling. Because constant stimuli could be inefficient, then you can modify that method to a preset stimuli to the capacities of the observer. So you get you figure out about where their capacity is and start nearer to that level. With forced actually before we I was going to do this earlier. Before we keep going, let's I want to
Barbershop?
well, oh no, we will get to that. We're going to end early today.
Yes.
You got it stuck in my head.
You're welcome.
So hopefully the audio works here. Let's see. I'm going to I don't want you to see what's on the screen. All right. So what I'd like you to do is, now I was looking for an example. I could not find a good example. This was the best I found. You're going to hear the same audio clip of traffic. So like, I don't know why they did traffic, because the sound level varies as cars are coming and going. But so it's like it's a clip of a certain length. Yeah, I don't know exactly how long the clip is, but anyway, when you think you perceive a difference in the intensity of the sound, so that the amplitude, and it's not just the cars moving and coming and going, then raise your hand. Okay, I'm just curious to see how this goes. It's, and again, I don't know why they did it for moving traffic, because the sound varies within each clip, but you'll hear cars coming and going. When you can tell that, so they'll adjust. They're going to be going down in the sound level. So when you think there's been a clear drop in the sound, so it's the same clip again, but it's lower. When you hear that, when you think it's dropped, then raise your hand. Hopefully it's not too loud. All right. I'll just let you watch it so you see what.
Yeah, they should have chose some other sound.
Yeah.
That was really annoying to listen to.
I'm gonna turn it down a little bit. Yeah, they should have picked a constant sound. But so there was a drop from the reference 1 down, 3 down, 5 down, and then 10 down. And most of you got all those. So I think you two got the 1 decibel, which is impressive. I don't think I would have. So on this, it says 10 is a halving of the noise level, but according to OSHA, the 5 decibels is half, and according to ACGIH, so it always depends on who you talk to. ACGIH, this is industrial hygiene stuff, but to them, 3 is a halving or a doubling, depending on which direction you're going. Anyway. So with forced choice, you have the stimulus, but you also have some other aspect that you make them identify. This is interesting. So I think this happens in hearing tests too, although it's been a while since I've had one. But instead of just simply indicating, oh, it went up or down, you're also indicating which side, like you guys were talking about. Oh, it was on the right or on the left. Instead of, so you're indicating the direction as well as the change in intensity. And interestingly, it often reveals a lower absolute threshold than using other methods, which I guess for those who stress out about their audiogram is helpful. And I think that's what they use. So, all right. So functions. Any guesses on what's going on in this graph, just by looking at it?
Measuring different sound waves.
Okay, good. So they're varying the frequency and the intensity. So they're all different types of experiments, but they're all happening during the same trial, I guess, if you will. That's what's going on here. The power law. So this looks more complicated than it actually is. Here you have the perceived magnitude. C is the slope. Here. This is the threshold. So if we're talking about audiograms, then think of an absolute threshold. It could be a different threshold as well, but where you can't hear it to where you can. And then S sub S is the physical stimulus strength. And there's an interesting figure here. I'm curious how they figured this out. Apparently by shocking people. I don't know. But so this is on the y-axis, you have the perceived magnitude in the log scale. If this wasn't a log scale, then it would look like some really crazy curve. Anyway, so it's a log scale on both scales, and then this is the stimulus intensity. So by putting them both on log scales, you can see it is a linear relationship. Actually, if we remove the log scale on each, I think it would also be a linear relationship. Anyway, the relationship is linear, but you can see that for different stimuli, it's a different relationship. For not much increase in intensity of shock, we perceive a bigger increase than there actually was. because then the slope is 3.5, meaning for every one, say they increase it by 1 volt, we would perceive an increase of 3.5 volts. You know, which I don't know. Has anyone ever received a serious shock before? I haven't received a serious one either, but even just the little ones, you know, you can kind of tell. Yeah, like, wow, I don't want to do that again. So anyway, it's interesting that with electrical shock, that's what we perceive. And then with brightness, we're less perceptive, I guess you could say. So as the brightness increases, we don't perceive as much of an increase in intensity. But that
for this experiment. I want to be electrocuted.
All right, so some of the disadvantages of the classical methods, some of them are inefficient. When the signal goes below the threshold, the response is treated as random, which is not necessarily helpful for quantifying that relationship. And then it also can fail to account for responses when there is no signal. So next time, so on Thursday, we will do a stats review, and then next week we'll start signal detection theory, which works to address some of those problems. All right, so does everyone have headphones? Because it won't work. Do you have any headphones on you?
No.
Oh, I mean, I have some, if you don't mind using mine. You really have to wear headphones. So I'll show you the link, and you'll have to go home and get some headphones and try it. Okay, yeah, let me see. So it's this one. So just so you know you're on the right one, we'll start it. Yeah, you have to use headphones. It's kind of funny. Anyway, so if you hear that, then you know you're on the right one. So I'll post it on Canvas. It's just really interesting. Close your eyes. It says close your eyes, but if you close your eyes, you can, in your mind's eye, you can envision where this guy is. As the barber is like walking around his shop, and then he cuts your hair. Anyway, it's interesting how the brain uses those signals to estimate. Yeah, to estimate, like, okay, he's right there. Oh wow, he's like right in my face. Anyway, it's cool. And that's it.